Canadian prairie provinces have their histories intertwined with railways. If it wasn't for the roads of steel and the iron horse, Western Canada would never have been settled as it is today. Yorkton itself was settled as we see today because of the railways. I'm Hayden DeGrow, and I'm the Culture and Heritage Specialist for the City of Yorkton. I love learning history, and teaching people about Yorkton's past is a proud part of my job. Join me as I highlight fascinating people, places, and events from Yorkton's history and take you where these places can be found today. This is Yorkton Retold. By 1889, Yorkton was already a permanent village, with the Northwest Mounted Police building a station in the area. Also, enough children were now in the region that a full school district was necessary. Farming was everywhere, especially wheat, and was being carted into the village by horses. However, one thing was still missing: a railway link. In 1890, Yorkton finally got that connection, and a Winnipeg based company announced it was coming to town. That company was the Manitoba and Northwestern Railway, or M&NW. As the survey for the line began, the town of Yorkton awaited the trains eagerly. However, the survey did not go as the town had planned. The M&NW actually chose not to build next to the village, instead buying less expensive land a few kilometers to the south. As a result, the town of Yorkton moved itself to meet the railway. By the time the building crews had arrived, Yorkton had settled into its new location. By 1891, the rails were laid down and the trains were moving. Yorkton, though, was still the end of the line, without the extension toward Saskatoon that was promised. As it turned out, by the time the railways had reached Yorkton, the M&NW was in severe financial trouble. Canadian Pacific Railway had a monopoly on Canadian rail traffic at the time, which meant small railways like the M&NW were being held captive by CPR's rates when they exchanged. Despite several attempts to save the company, the M&NW declared bankruptcy in fall of 1893, only 2 years after arriving in Yorkton. All was not lost, though. Canadian Pacific wound up absorbing the M&NW into their own system. They did this to gain a second main line from Winnipeg through Saskatchewan, which would later extend to Saskatoon and eventually to Edmonton. Yorkton became an important stop for the trains, the Little White Sand River being a strong water source for the steam locomotives. Canadian Pacific built a railway depot and station along North Front Street, replacing a much smaller terminal built by the M&NW. Grain elevators and mills popped up across the rails along South Front Street, giving farmers a place to do business. The only one of these buildings that remains today is the Yorkton Flour Mill. And this is that mill. In another video, I described the place in full detail, but for now, I could say that this building was constructed by hand out of bricks from local plants. The oldest brick mill in Saskatchewan, Yorkton's Flour Mill is currently a historic attraction for the city and is having a replica train station added on to expand its space. But it wasn't just Canadian Pacific Railways that carved out a place in Yorkton. By the turn of the century, a second rail line had come to town, called the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway. The railway had already built its main line through Melville and up to Saskatoon, and wanted to expand it north. Their idea was to connect their lines with Churchill, Manitoba, a port on the Hudson Bay. Though they wouldn't reach Churchill, in 1909 the GTP was still laying tracks to Yorkton. This time, land deals went through without a hitch, and the railway drove straight through town. The GTP established its own station, engine house, freight yard, and warehouse district along its lines. This intersected with the CP tracks in Yorkton, making a large industrial area downtown. To help celebrate the opening of the railway, Sir Wilfrid Laurier, Canada's 7th Prime Minister, stopped in Yorkton on his cross-country train tour. This photo shows his train arriving in the city, becoming the first passenger train to use Grand Trunk Pacific's new facilities. But not even 2 railways were enough for the city. A third rail line arrived very soon after the Grand Trunk Pacific. Called the Canadian Northern Railway, or CNOR, the railway built a branch off of this line at Roxton, Saskatchewan, and connected to Yorkton between 1914 and 1950. Their line ran along the easternmost part of modern Highway 10 and turned north when it hit town. It went up between what are now 7th and 8th Avenues and then turned west towards Willowbrook. Where I am standing here was CNOR's yard, where they had a maintenance facility for their locomotives. This line helped companies build new grain elevators on the northern edge of town, one of which you can still see in the distance here. As you can see, though, the lines here are gone. The reason for that is, by 1923, both the Grand Trunk Pacific and Canadian Northern had gone broke. World War I had seen Canadian Pacific receive most of the wartime traffic, leaving the other lines with almost nothing to ship, which meant no revenue. To maintain the lines, the Canadian government then combined them into the Canadian National Railways, which was a crown corporation. This meant, though, that some lines required abandonment. With CNOR's line running parallel to GTP's in Yorkton, CN decided to abandon the former, leaving GTP's lines intact. Today, parks remain where the lines once stood. Through the 1920s and 1930s, trains rapidly became a powerful part of Yorkton's life. Thousands of immigrants arrived in the city through the two stations, which made the city's population rise really quickly. As we can see here, these various photos show the stations who not only allowed passengers to board and disembark their trains, but also handled all mail coming and going from the region. The bags of mail were taken by postmen in horse-drawn wagons and sleds, later cars, and delivered to the stations, where they were sorted by destination and loaded onto baggage cars to be sent off. As these bags were loaded, bags for the Yorkton area were also unloaded, sorted again to specific locales, and sent out with the postman. Throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, though, passenger lines were declining severely as highways pulled people off the rails. Before that began to truly affect Yorkton, the city was visited by a special train in 1980. Called the Discovery Train, it was meant to be a traveling history museum showcasing Canadian heritage and culture. To make the visit even more special, the Discovery Train celebrated its one-year anniversary in Yorkton's CNR yard, one of the last uses of the Yorkton CNR passenger platform before it was demolished. I am currently standing where that platform once was. The large area behind me the remains of the CNR Yorkton yard. In this commercial spot is where the CPR station and freight depot once stood. That carpet store you see at the far end is right where the station and its platforms once stood. I explained in another video that the gardens in front of this station were the highlight of this area of town and offered beauty for the city. Today, Yorkton is still served by freight trains, with the massive canola crushing plants northwest of town being serviced by both lines, as well as many grain terminals in the area. Yorkton's agricultural scene is still deeply connected to the train. Other freight that passes through the city include potash from surrounding mines, lumber and paper from northern timber plants, and crude oil from various areas. With this much traffic, over 7 trains a day pass through Yorkton at its peak. Trains have helped build Yorkton and the province of Saskatchewan in general. Just one of the many railway towns that were set up to help settle Western Canada, Yorkton fits right in the niche of towns that never would have existed without the train. From old steam locos to the massive modern diesels, the history of the prairies has run right along the steel of Canada's railways. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. See you next time, history buffs.